Just tell you about the Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Minister, Thoko Didiza. She's granted permits for the importation of table eggs, fertilized eggs and poultry meat. Didiza hopes this intervention will assist with festive holiday stock for retailers. South African poultry farmers are battling a bout of avian influenza. We're now joined by the Deputy Director General of Agri-Production, Biosecurity and Natural Resources Management, Dipepeneneng Serage. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. Perhaps we'll get into the intervention in a few moments, but what has called for it more so when we're taking a look at the festive season in December? Is this to suggest that stocks are quite low?
The numbers, good evening, good afternoon to you and to your viewers. The numbers don't suggest a crisis, but the shelf situation suggests something else. So we are just being very careful so that we don't go into the festive seasons without sufficient stock of table eggs and sufficient stock of poultry meat. Yes, so the importation is basically to ensure that we don't ever run short of stock.
What do the numbers say, and what is the shelf situation if they're not talking to each other?
If you look at where we are now and you compare this with the 2021 situation, 2021 around the end of September, we were still higher, and we didn't run into a situation that we have now. The numbers suggest that when we got from the Poultry Association, it says 30% of the stock, the egg-laying chickens have been slaughtered, or calves, in fact, that will be calved. So that shouldn't then lead us into a crisis. As you would remember, we have already, we are importing eggs and we are importing poultry meat, albeit that at controlled quantities, because we want to protect the poultry business in the country, the poultry farming business in the country. So importation has not new; it has been happening. We've been importing poultry meat, eggs from Brazil, Argentina, and the United States of America. But that was under very strict and controlled quantities. But we shouldn't be here. But now that when you look at the shelf life, there seems to be no eggs. We're still investigating as to why, because the numbers, like I said, don't suggest the crisis. Numbers don't indicate towards the direction of us having to import to replenish stock. But we have to, because it looks like, we're not sure yet, but it looks like the industry is withholding stock. We don't know. It's something to be investigated. But we're not going to wait while we're investigating. We're going to continue to import so that the prices don't go up and then our citizens will suffer.
So we've got three categories: table eggs, fertilized eggs, and poultry meats. As you rightfully mentioned, the importing has been happening for quite some time. In terms of permits that have been issued, just how many permits have been granted?
From 1 September to date, we have granted permission. We have issued 115 permits for fertilized egg. But let me explain. A permit, when you issue out a permit, you don't really know what are the quantities that will be involved. But I'll quickly, after the numbers, I'll then get to the volumes that we've received. 105 permits, and by the way, one permit can be one full shipping container or more. So if you look at the number of permits, you won't get the whole picture. But 115 permits for fertilized eggs have been issued, 48 permits for egg powder, and 2,400 for poultry meat to date. But when you look at the volumes that have arrived through our borders, 34,500 metric tons of poultry meat has, since the 1st of September, has arrived in the country. Close to 2 million fertilized eggs have already arrived in the country, and 5,840 day-old chicks have already arrived in the country. Now, day-old chicks could be the ones that are going to give us layers, because for eggs you need layer chickens. So that's where you then have table eggs. Table eggs are the eggs that we consume day to day. These are not fertilized, so this would become what you eat during breakfast. The table eggs. Fertilized eggs are the ones that are going to give us chickens, and this could be chickens that we are going to be layer chickens, which will give us eggs, or chickens that will give us meat, chicken meat or broiler meat. So at the moment, we are busy also approving permits. The numbers that I've just given you were as at yesterday. So today, there will obviously have been other permits granted.
All right. Mr. Serage, if you could please indulge us in terms of quality assurance, because when you mention one of your suppliers when it comes to these three categories, Brazil being one of them, there's always been a conversation in the country about anti-dumping. And at one point, it was a real thing with Brazil. So when it comes to quality assurance and price, right, so when it gets to the shelves, that the price, it does not cost the consumer too much. Maybe those two issues, quality assurance, and you can talk to price.
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's a very brilliant question, because then it allows us an opportunity to explain what happens. So after issuing an import permit, the importer will then contact the exporter on the other side, and then the consignment gets shipped, if it's shipped or air freight, to our shores. Upon landing, most of it should be Durban or Cape Town at the port. The consignment is still not released until we do a few things, one of which is to take samples and send them to the laboratories to ensure that they do not have, amongst the others, avian flu, amongst the others, all other microbiological organisms. So we do that even without the outbreak. That's what we do on a routine basis. Hence, we've got officials at all ports of entry, at the airports, at the land borders, and at the harbors. Their job, amongst the other things, is to take samples and check. But before even we do the sample, before we issue a permit, maybe the question should be, why must people apply for permits? Before we grant a permit for importation of whatever agricultural products from any country, we ensure that we know which facility in Brazil, for instance, which facility we're going to be importing from, and the status and everything else. And the state veterinarian in that country would have assured that the consignments or the products sent or shipped out to South Africa comply with their own laws as well as the laws of our country, South Africa, in as far as the safety, which comes first, safety is concerned, and thereafter quality then follows. And obviously, once we are sure, and after taking the samples and the laboratory results come back, and those that do not comply, by the way, what viewers might not know, there's a lot of consignments that we reject at the port of entry if we find them to have diseases. So we don't always release everything else. So the ones that I've told you, the numbers that I've told you, 34,500 metric tons of poultry meat, are those that are these are the tons that have been released within the country after ensuring that they do not have any diseases or anything that can be harmful to consumers.
Okay, that's a comforting thought. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. Dipepeneneng Serage, the Deputy Director General of the Agricultural Production, Biodiversity and National Resources Management.